we are back. I'm so happy to continue this conversation about physical wellness, nutrition, and how to feed our bodies. Today, I have the dopest lady that I'm going to interview. I'm so excited about this interview because, Mubarakah, who you guys are going to meet in just a few minutes, was dynamic and changing my life and the way that I see wellness and fitness and nutrition. And she, I don't know if you remember, but I gave you a run for your money. I was like, I don't want to exercise. I don't care about this, And I was just so resistant. But I really feel that you were so gentle with me, moving me along, kind of meeting me where I was at. And I'm excited for you to share your knowledge, because the dopest thing about you is that it's not about an exercise routine or you giving us some meal prep. It's your knowledge base, what you have studied about the human body, but in particular, how that relates back to the Black community. And that's what I love about you. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself? And then let's get rocking, because you have so much information to share that I want to make sure you get it all in.
Thank you. So I appreciate those words. I think that is so often that we aren't aware of how we affect people's lives. So I always take it to heart how people perceive me and my services. So my name is Mubarakah Ibrahim. I call myself a health and happiness coach. I have 13 fitness and nutrition certification, as well as an interdisciplinary degree in exercise science, public health, and psychology. And I've been in the health and wellness field for the last 20 years.
Wow. So you've been doing this before this was even a craze. Like, yeah. You're an OG. You're an OG in fitness. That's I'm gonna change your name. Instead of like health and happiness coach, be like OG coach.
When someone first called me an OG on Instagram, I was like, oh my God, am I old? But now I embrace it. Okay, I'm an OG.
I love it. So tell us about, like, what made you passionate about, focusing an entire career? I mean, you ran down your credentials, and I'm like, you have clearly set the pace about what you wanted to do and how you wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. And you're a healer, and you've taken a healing stance in a different way than I have, but you're still a healer nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. I always say that everything that I am and I am not is because of my parents, both all of the good things that they taught me and all of the unhealthy ways that I and habits that I saw them have throughout my lifetime, and what ultimately led to their mortality. My mom got gestational diabetes when she was pregnant with my little sister when I was about 7 years old, and she spent the next 30 years of her life not knowing how to take care of herself. My dad died at 55 from a stroke induced by high blood pressure. He didn't even know he had high blood pressure. And knowing that I have such a strong family history of both of these diseases, and that they are both preventable diseases, that really makes me passionate so that other moms can be there for their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and their life isn't cut short by a disease that can be managed and even reversed.
Wow. And tell us how that relates, because you talked about high blood pressure, you talked about diabetes. These are diseases that run rampant in the Black community. Mm-hmm. Most people have, like you said, intergenerational health problems around these particular, cholesterol, diabetes, high pressure, heart disease. Mm-hmm. And I know, and if we follow your social media platforms, which Mubarakah is going to share with you guys before we end, you do a great job of detailing how through nutrition or lack thereof, we haven't been able to break that cycle for ourselves and our future generations. Mm-hmm. how would you position a conversation with people? What kind of recommendations would you give in terms of if they wanted to look at their family history and really actively do something different from here forward?
I think that one of the things about health, just intergenerational economic problems, intergenerational health problems need to both be looked at, and in the same way that, yes, we do have a history of institutionalized racism and disparities in every single area of society, but there are things that we can take personal accountability for. I think that in terms of the Black economic situation, we have seen a greater effort in mindset shift that, hey, these disparities exist, but I can do this to change it for me and my family. So like we talk about breaking breaking the curse of financial literacy, or breaking the curse of economics. We need to look at health in the same way. I don't think that we've made that mindset shift in health. Is like, hey, these things exist, but I can actually physically do things personally to avoid this and to change this for myself and my children, because there are things that we can do on an individual level that can break that generational curse. I tongue-in-cheekly tell people, they say, oh, you must have grew up in a healthy family. And I say, you know, health was mentioned in my family growing up just as much as any other Chinese word. Never. Right? It wasn't even idea of focus. And I think that this is also a switch that is generational, right? So my mom's generation, if my mom was alive, she would be in her mid-70s now. Their generation came from a generation where it was about survival. Food was about, do I have food? It doesn't matter the quality of food. They were about literally just getting food. We have gone, for many of us, as in a generation where we actually have the privilege of thinking about the food that we're eating. We're not in starvation. We're not, you know, in a position where we don't have choice. So now it's about making the proper choices that is going to take our health in account. And this is about habit and lifestyle more than anything. Okay. So I'm often telling people, it's not about making huge lifestyle changes. Okay. Little teeny habits lead up to lifestyle changes. Simply as, hey, instead of going to the movies for once a week with your kids, decide to go play miniature golf, go bowling, do something that's going to physically get people moving, and make that a habit for your family. Think about in 20 years when your kids reflect back on, hey, we always did this. What are those health habits that you want your kids to say, we always did?
Wow. So what, in this kind of situation where you have a lot of families that are stuck at home and don't know exactly what to do, and perhaps are not doing any physical fitness, or feel like they're trapped, what are some habits that they can start to create now to, you know, to engage in something and have their kids engage in something, so that the quality of time that they're spending together is centered around some kind of movement and physical wellness?
So I think it's going to vary a lot, of course, depending on the age of your children. But one of the things that you can do is literally go for daily walks. Say, and make it interesting. Say, hey, we're going to go for a daily walk. And if you have little kids, I want you to take a pen and a piece of paper and write down everything red that you see. I want you to write down everything blue, right? Make it an activity for them, but make it a habit where they can look back and say, oh, you know, remember the time that we was in quarantine, but we went for a walk every day and this happened and that happened. That's an experience that you can have. If you're having them play board games instead of just sitting down and, you know, playing Monopoly, order a twister game. It gets them physically active, right? Anything that's going to get them up and moving. Let them go outside and play if you have a yard, right? We can still social distance and still be physically active, going for a walk, playing twisters, doing, having a jumping jack competition, making sure that they do something physical every single day is going to be really important. And it's going to help them and you kind of maintain your sanity in all of this.
I love that, because I think that it's also educational, right? Like, I love the idea of a daily walk, but then they have to call out anything that's red or blue, or use like that little game I Spy. Mm-hmm. They're also learning at the same time. And a lot of parents feel burdened by having to be, the teacher and the parent and the cook and the this and the that. But now if you start to learn how to integrate some things together, you're teaching at the same time that you're doing PE. Yeah. Any thoughts like yoga or meditation for kids? I know that there are lots of studies where kids, school districts actually are now starting to implement yoga, meditation, and restorative work as a mechanism to reduce behavioral problems. Mm-hmm. And this is such a large scale commitment or campaign to do that. How can parents in their home, maybe with having one, or several children, implement some yoga practices and meditation to help their children kind of regulate themselves and become more attuned with their body? Any recommendations there?
Absolutely. So I think that first, when we say meditation, I think that people think that you got to sit down for an hour and right? And like, right. But meditation, which I like to use the word mindfulness, because I think that it opens it up a little bit more for people who are like, oh, I can't meditate. So mindfulness is it's really being able to focus on one particular thing, right? So you're putting everything out of your mind and be able to focus. So the question that people normally ask me, like, my kids are like all over the place. How do I get them to focus? So you don't have to technically get them to sit down and say, okay, just be quiet for 10 minutes, even though that's so tempting when you have little ones, right? But
or more like, be quiet.
Right. So here's some great ways that you can start getting them into mindfulness. Okay. Tell them, when you go brush your teeth, I want you to only focus on what it feels like brushing your teeth, right? I want you to tell me whether or not the water is warm or cold. What does the bubbles feel like in your mouth? Were you able to stop yourself from swallowing it? Did you actually smell something when you were brushing your teeth? Make them, the technique that, my daughter was inside of a mindfulness study once, and the technique that the instructor talked about was pretending like you're an alien and you've never brushed your teeth ever in your life. What exactly does that feel like? If you had to go back and describe to your other alien buddies that humans brush their teeth, what does it feel like? And and if it's not using a toothbrush, in this particular study, we did, she gave us one raisin, and we had to put the raisin in our mouth and pretend like we were aliens. What exactly does a raisin feel like, taste like, the texture, at what point does it soften? So you can't bite it. You have to literally just suck it and then write down what you're doing. So what that does is that it keeps them very active. I like these techniques because I'm such a type A personality. It's really, I make myself, but it was very difficult for me to make myself sit down and like, okay. Like, it was so difficult. Like, I'm so type A that I was like, okay, if I have to meditate for 5 minutes a day, exactly how many breaths is that?
Right?
And so I figured out that it was 48 breaths. So I literally count my breaths. So if you're that type of person, then You don't have to stay still. It's not necessarily about what your body is doing, it's what your mind is doing. Think about ways that you can take 5, make them do something that normally takes 30 seconds. How can you make it take 5 minutes for them, and then 10 minutes for them? And once they're able to do that, then you can say, hey, let's sit down and actually see if you can pay attention to 100 breaths in and out, right? So it keeps them engaged mentally, but also helps them to focus their mind on one particular thing. And we know mindfulness, it helps with everything from depression, anxiety, ADHD, eating disorders. Mindfulness is it is something that everybody should be able to do, but with the way that technology is happening, people are becoming less mindful, and so we have to make effort. It's sort of kind of like exercise. It really is like the way exercise works, because before we had TV and technology, exercise was a part of our daily life. But now that we do so many things sedentary, we have to actually make time for exercise, right? And mindfulness is the same thing. We used to sit down and read books or focus on one task. And so it was a part of our daily lives. But now that we're so disjointed and doing so many different things, we have to actually make time for the mindfulness. And it works the same way.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we make room for the things that are important to us. So that's the beauty of what you're suggesting, is that if we want to start to make changes, they can be measurable, you know, specific, like those SMART goals, right? And that we can kind of move our way through this. And this is a great opportunity to do it, because frankly, all the other distractions that usually keep us from engaging in these types of activities are no longer a barrier. You know, other things are barriers, but not this. So I want to start to kind of land this plane a little bit by asking you a couple of questions that seem sometimes controversial, right? About, you know, the Black community in particular, although I think that there are other communities that struggle with the same thing, making some conscious decisions around how they're going to treat their bodies and how they're going to change their lifestyles, not just in light of what COVID has highlighted. You know, and it's really interesting the spin that's happening, like, oh, more Black people are dying than ever, you know, as a result of COVID. And you've been pretty clear that part of what is at play here is the pre-existing conditions that we haven't dealt with, right? And so how do we get ahead of this so that it doesn't become a scare tactic? Because I think that we can get caught up in looking every day at the death toll, at how many people are infected. That, I mean, honestly, from a psychological perspective, it becomes an obsession, you know, and that obsession starts to ruminate in our minds, and then we get caught up in the hamster wheel of like gloom and doom and death, and you know, it's knocking at the door, and even to the point where our minds will start to make us believe that we're sick, you know. And so what message, clear message, can you give to the Black community, to communities of color who struggle in this area, in terms of how they can ignite a different frame of thinking, which is, I believe that's where it begins. Making a choice and starting to think differently about that.
So one of the things that I really want Black people and communities of color to recognize is that Black people have been dying more often from disease before COVID. COVID just made it all, is just pushing it forward. Black people die more often from diabetes every single day. The equivalent of a 747 plane full of Black women dying from heart disease happens every single day. Over 230 Black women every day in America die from heart disease. High blood pressure, we are more likely to die from high blood pressure. Obesity, we have higher rates of obesity. All of those diseases have just been killing us slowly, and COVID sped it up. So one, we have to recognize that this is not a new thing. We have just been lazy about it and ignoring it because it happens so slowly, right? My mother had diabetes for 35 years before she died. It was killing her for 35 years. But there was no urgency from her medical providers to help her with it because it was happening very slowly. The glaucoma came one year, the neuropathy came the next year, the heart disease came the next year, and then the stroke came, and then so it comes one at a time, but COVID just pushed everything forward altogether. So I think that this should be a wake-up call for the Black community to say, hey, we are dying and we don't have to. That is the most important part. We don't have to, even though there's health disparities inside of the medical system, we don't have to. If you know that you are not going to get proper treatment when you go inside of the doctor, then avoid going to the doctor by taking care of your health. Right? Don't have a need for somebody that it's not going to give you what you require. And that is going to start with us changing the way that we eat, changing the way that we move. We have to remove the idea, the mindset that we have to get out of is this is an inevitable, inheritable disease. That if my mom got diabetes, then I'm gonna get diabetes. I can remember being a young girl. I am one of 5 children, and I can remember us sitting around and talking about, who was going to inherit my mom's legs and the softness of her skin and her hair and her diabetes. Just like diabetes was like an inevitable part, right? And I remember as a teenager, in my mind, I was like, I'm not going to get the diabetes. Y'all can have that one. Y'all can claim it. Because I'm not going to. I remember thinking this when I was like 12, 13 years old, because I saw how it made her cranky, how she didn't feel good, how some days she could barely see. Like, I saw that as a young girl, and I was like, I don't know how I'm not going to get diabetes, but I'm going to figure it out. Right? So I think our first mindset shift is this is preventable, right? The second mindset shift is this is about lifestyle, right? You don't have to become a vegan and make your water alkaline. That is way on the other end. The first thing, drink water, right? I tell people this all the time, right? They're like, oh, well, what kind of water should I drink? The type that's H2O. Don't make it complicated. Just drink water. You can worry about all that later after you develop the habit. Don't put things, unnecessary things as barriers. Make your plate smaller. It can be, you start off with that. You do not need a full dinner plate of food that's overflowing every single night. Right? We think of Black food as being unhealthy. Black food is not unhealthy. The amount that we consume is unhealthy, right? We talk about the things that we think as Black food, fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, collard greens. Oh yeah, we've been eating this for years and years. Black people back in sharecropping days, definitely not back in slavery. Yes, they ate those things, but that wasn't their daily meals. They had that on a holiday, or maybe on Sunday they were allowed to get chicken, because you literally could not eat chicken every single day, because if you ate the chicken, you wouldn't get the eggs, right? Meat wasn't even that common for Black people to eat on a daily basis. So the stuff that we are attributing to a typical Black diet, it's not that it's not, if Black people didn't eat it, it's not just what we ate, it's how we ate, right? We wasn't eating 3 meals a day and 2 snacks and having bacon for breakfast and fried chicken for dinner. Black people didn't eat like that. We didn't even eat like that back in the 60s and 70s, because you literally could not afford it. It is our privilege and our affluence, even though we don't think of it like that, that even makes us want to eat in the ways that we eat. So it's about changing small habits.
Even fast food is an option, going to McDonald's and, Burger King and all these other places and consuming those supersized, meals. And you're right. I mean, imagine the amount of money that you spend there on a weekly basis, and if you were just to go to the grocery store, or a farmer's market and spend that same amount, the difference not only in what the quality of food that you can get, but how much longer it can last you. Absolutely. So it's not about that. Most times money is an issue. I know that there are issues with food deserts and, the amount of nutritional income that folks get in, but a lot of times is about the how it's spent and which way education around food. You talked about literacy for finance. It's almost that comes into play, right? It's literacy in the type of food choices that you're going to make,
When I think that a lot of times that we automatically assume that people go to McDonald's and Burger King because that's what they can afford. But in my experience, it's not even about what people can afford. It's about convenience, right? Yeah. If you're a single mom and you're working all day and you got to go pick up 3 kids and you're tired, you're going to go to McDonald's because it's convenient, not because, oh, that's the only thing that you can afford, right? So I think that it's about getting out of that mindset that it's convenient, but what you save now, you're going to pay for later, right? How many times are you going to have to take your kid to the doctor because they're overweight? You got to call out from work because your kid is sick. So you're paying for it on the back end because of the convenience now, but there's other ways for you to make sure that your kids eat healthy and it not be a burden. It doesn't have to be a 5-course meal every single night. There's crock pot meals. There's things you can make ahead of time. There's so many different ways for you to do that. And when it comes for you to actually have the food, I tell people, don't use the idea of, oh, I don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, as I think people overestimate how important that is, because nutritionally, frozen broccoli is going to give you the same nutrients as fresh broccoli. Fresh broccoli may taste a little better, but you can buy frozen broccoli and have it in your freezer for the month so that you aren't tempted to say, oh, well, we're not having any vegetables tonight. Right? There's so many other ways for you to do that than to use it. I'm really, I think I pay attention a lot to things that people put as superficial barriers to eating healthy, right? It's another excuse that you can make in your head that, oh, I can't get to the farmer's market, so we're not going to have no vegetables tonight. No, there's an excuse. Have some frozen vegetables.
And I love what you're kind of describing, which is not like this all or nothing mindset, right? Like, oh, well, if I can't go fresh and vegan and plant-based and alkaline water, then I can't do it. It's like, but if you can get some frozen vegetables, if you can go outside and, pinpoint colors with your children, those are reasonable small steps that you can do every day to get towards that. And the goal may not be alkaline water and plant-based, it could be whatever you determine it, as long as you are moving in that direction.
Right.
Mubarakah, I love this conversation. I'm so excited about it. I hope that people will listen and hear this message and follow you. Tell us where you can be found in terms of social media. You are a wealth of unbelievable knowledge, and I know that you do life coaching, you do all kinds of different coaching to get people in terms of their, not just their physical fitness, but their mindset, changing their mindset around this. Share with us where folks can find you, how they can get in touch with you, where they can go to get resources, because I know you just, oh my God, we didn't even talk about your book. That has to be another podcast, because we didn't even talk about the keto diet and your book and all of that. So tell us where they can find you. And then I think we need to do a part 2, because we got to talk about your book in keto and your life, you know, that lifestyle change, which was dramatic for you. But for now, let's give them all your information, which we'll jot down so that they can have access to you.
So I am Fit Muslimah everywhere. FITMUSLIMAH. That is my handle on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. I started TikTok, but I'm sort of
Girl, you doing the look? I'm not doing.
My website is also fitmuslimah.org. So if you put in Fit Muslimah inside of the Google search engine, I will come up everywhere, and you can contact me on any of those platforms. Everybody knows that I'm on social media every single day. I do health coaching. I have online programs if you feel like you just need direction, but not necessarily that one-on-one. If you're local and you want some one-on-one training, I do that as well. So you can reach out to me in any of those ways.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You are amazing. You are God sent. Folks, do not miss this opportunity. Get in touch with Mubarakah. She will change your life.